Okay, as we're getting close to finishing this segment, this mini-master on weather in the National Airspace System, uh, we just do a little bit of a reminder that these are the reference places here. Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge for these chapters, 14 and 15, or the Remote Pilot Small Unmanned Aircraft System Study Guide, which I printed, but you can get them, you can download them from the FAA website for free. But I printed them for you. I would suggest you read through Chapter 2 and Chapter 11, Airport Operations and Airspace, just to review. Remember now that it may be up to 45% of your written exam questions will be on operations, which would include airport procedures. So we're going to cover airport procedures today and the chart supplement US. Anyway, let's move right into it here. It shouldn't take long to do this. Most of this is going to have to be self-study on your own by, again, Remote Pilot Small Unmanned Aircraft System Study Guide will be helpful, and other materials we've gone through. Airport operations. Okay, so we have airport traffic patterns. There'll be a number of questions on this. The names, why do we need to know the names of these traffic pattern locations? But this is practical reasons, of course. When we're operating near an airport, especially a pilot-controlled airport or an uncontrolled airport, we're trying to maintain situational awareness of where the manned aircraft are, because the rule is we're not allowed to interfere with manned aircraft. So we need to know where they are, otherwise we'll not know how we can avoid them. So we need to know the traffic patterns, because manned aircraft will be calling at an uncontrolled airport, or even at a controlled airport for that matter, will be making position reports as they approach the runway to land, or if they're departing the airport as well. Works both ways. They need to be telling other pilots, other manned aircraft pilots, what they're doing. We don't want to bump into each other. So this example here, it's right out of the book. If we were in class, I'd ask the class to say, what runway would this, the one that they're landing on here, what runway number would that be? And just remember that the top of the chart is almost always north, so this would be pointing to the east, which would be runway number 9. So the traffic that was entering this traffic pattern, in this traffic pattern, would be referencing their position relative to the active runway, landing into the wind, in this particular case, runway number 9. And we have an upwind leg, which is, in this chart, in this picture here, it's departure. Okay, so don't get confused here. Let's see if I gotta use red, I guess. Departure, that's another way of saying upwind leg. Then, of course, there's a crosswind leg, which is labeled correctly here. So they make a left turn. Standard traffic patterns are left-hand patterns. So they're clocking the way around their downwind leg. So we'll have questions on the written test which will say something like, if you are northwest of the airport and the airplane calls on left downwind for runway 9, will that be a conflict? A question like that. Well, if we're northwest of the airport, we're up here somewhere in our little drone. He's over here going this way. So yeah, it's possible, depending on how close we are to the airport. That's kind of question. Downwind leg, then we have a base leg, which is this one here, and then a final approach leg, or the final leg, or final approach. Flight path in the direction of landing along the extended runway center line from the base leg to the runway. Okay, so when they're turning on final approach, they are positioning the airplane to point down the runway, and if the runway number is number 9 in this example, they'll be on a heading of 9 degrees or 90 degrees. If the runway was heading to the north, it'd be runway 36. They'd be pointing on final approach on a 360 heading, which would mean they're south of the airport. So if you're at a pilot-controlled airport, you're monitoring the common traffic advisory frequency. Sometimes it's just a little circle with a C in the middle of it. Sometimes it's C, T, A, F in the frequency. That's the number you want to be monitoring on your radio. Now, if you have been given permission to operate in controlled airspace, you would be listening to the tower frequency. They might even specify that you must listen to that might be part of your waiver, is that you must listen to the control tower frequency so that they can give you instructions to descend or get out of the way, whatever. Either way, we need to know these names for the traffic pattern for the test and in real life. Another associated question is how far out would, if somebody's approaching to land the airport, how far out would they make their first call? 10 nautical miles out. All right. Traffic pattern altitudes are, for propeller-driven manned aircraft, it's 1,000 feet above ground level. If it's a jet turboprop, 1,500 feet above ground level. Helicopters, 500 feet above ground level. 500 feet is pretty low. If we're operating in an uncontrolled airport under the downwind leg, a helicopter could come very close to us if we were going to fly at the maximum altitude. Remember that we don't always have to fly at the maximum altitude. Just because we can doesn't mean we need to fly at 400 feet. And I would highly advise, if you're in the vicinity of an airport, not to fly at 400 feet, simply because helicopters. Hopefully they'll be good citizens and make calls on the common traffic advisory frequency, but perhaps that doesn't always happen. I did not mention the departure, but the departure is a flight path which begins after takeoff and continues straight ahead, the extended runway, till reaching a point beyond the departure and the runway within 300 feet of the traffic pattern altitude. They make their turn. All right, and here we go. I already mentioned this before. Propeller-driven aircraft, 1,000 feet. Large for turbine, 1,500 feet. Helicopters, 500 feet. This is a good example of a airport with more than one traffic pattern. Or we can take it in a different way and say, well, this might be an example of a traffic pattern that has right traffic. Left hand, this side here, is standard. But there are some airports that they request that you make right-hand patterns. All right, so right-hand patterns, if it said RP and a runway number, then you would know that runway, you'd make a right-hand pattern. In that case, when they take off, they make a right turn, and a right turn on downwind leg, and they make a right turn on base, and they make a right turn on final. For, again, this example is runway 9. And just be aware that you'd find that on the chart, RP and a runway number. That would be the runway they're doing right-hand patterns. Otherwise, if it's not designated, it's always left-hand patterns. They also have a demonstration here of how they leave the traffic pattern. And normally the manned aircraft will say departing, in this particular case, departing runway number 9, going to make it 45 degree, departing to the southeast. So he'd be doing this mattered here. So you'd know that if you're over here, he'd be climbing over the top of you. Or he may be doing a straight out departure, would be going that way. Just be aware of that. Okay, here's an example of a chart supplement US. This is a diagram of the airport, but I just want to point out this is the runway 25. PAPI is the approach lighting system. There's a hill, right traffic. That's the note I'm trying to point out here. It's right-hand patterns here, which means for runway 25, they'd be going this way. 25, this is 25 here. So they'd be taking off here, and instead of going left, they'd turn right. And then that'd be crosswind, and then downwind here, base leg here, and then final there. Okay, so it's on the chart, but it's also going to be on the or in the chart supplement US. Also, a lot of more, obviously, a lot of information in the chart supplement. One thing that might be helpful too is that it will, I do not see it here. Here it is, communication CTAF frequency is listed. Of course, that's on the chart as well. Airport manager, you can call him and bother him if you wish. Unattended, no facilities, so apparently no facilities. Skydiving activity. Oh, there we go. In skydiving activity on and in the vicinity of airport. Yeah, okay, so that's an important thing. You might be able. So there's going to be lots of notes in here, the remarks. Something else that would be of interest to you. Now they did say right traffic hill. Let's look at the next slide and see if we can get some enlightening information about this. Here's the same airport. And you notice it does say right patterns for runway 25. That's the runway that was going this way, right? 360 degrees. 090270 right there. Runway 25 would be like that, pointing that direction, right? So anyway, why can't we turn left? Well, because there's a hill here. They're just telling you there's a hill there, and it'd be preferable to do that. It's also possible that there may be a hotel there, and they don't want people making noise over the hotel, so they want you to go out over the water. So there's usually a practical reason for right-hand patterns. It's not just arbitrary. It's, at least in Georgia, it's because it's a town or something like that. But if other places in the country or in the world, there may be obstructions that would be preferable to make the turn to the right. Yeah, and then you see the C for the Common Traffic Advisory 122.9, which, by the way, is multicom. It's always multicom. Multicom is going to always be 122.9. Airport elevation 96 feet, lighted, and the longest runway 3,800 feet, which we got from the previous thing. 3,800 feet from the chart supplement also gave us the length of the runway. A lot of interesting details in this chart. Notice the magnetic variation. Gliders here, parachuters here. All right, so any other information that I wanted to point out? No. Okay, next slide. Here's another place, Columbus, Georgia, as a matter of fact. Okay, this is chart supplement US information. Do we have any right patterns, left patterns? So we look at the runway information. There's runway 624, asphalt, grooved runway. Tells you the high intensity lights. Runway 6, trees at the end. Okay, good. Runway 24. There's a building on the right side. Ooh, here we go, 7% up. Not that you need to know that, but I'm listing some few obstacles. You have fuel down here, services, airport marks intended continuously, runway. That's about it for that. We have a ASOS telephone number that you can call to find out what the weather is there. Of course, we have the latitude and longitude. We've talked about that in the past. But apparently all of the runways here, as far as I can tell, they're all left-hand standard patterns. Of course, there is a control tower as well. Here's St. Simon's Island. Again, latitude, longitude, the identifier KSSI, and runway 422, runway 4, runway 22's got trees. Everybody has trees on both runways for that matter. Okay, noise. Adjacent residential area to the southeast and north and south-southwest of runway 1634. So 1634, there's 34, and there's runway 16. So they want you to be careful about that. And that would apply to drones as well. It would be a place which if you have to fly there, you have to be aware that the neighbors might be quite annoyed at you and try to prevent you from flying there. But birds, wildlife, airport remarks. Lots of information here as well. All right, we'll keep going here. Cordell. We have same thing, latitude, longitude, trees. Runway 24, right traffic. Runway 24, here's runway 24, so they want you to come out here. The traffic manned aircraft is going to make a right turn. Downwind leg, base leg, final. So if you're over the Peach Orchard over here, or flying over the firing range, you might want to be aware of that. Weather services, we have a frequency and a phone number. CTAF 123.05. Of course, you could find that on the chart as well. Runway 28, we already said that. Runway 28 is 24, runway traffic, so they put it in both sections here. So you see, this is the most detailed information about an airport will be found in the chart supplement US. The sectional chart gives you a lot of information as well, but there's a lot of detail that you need to do. You would want to, if you're going to operate in the vicinity of an airport, you need to know how to access that information. And of course, the written test will have some examples, not very many, but a couple of examples of chart supplement US, and then you need to be able to dig down into it and try to understand what's going on there. Naples Municipal. Extremely, okay, noise. Got a whole section down here for noise. Extremely noise sensitive in all quadrants. Okay, it's right in the downtown area with a bunch of residential areas around there. So they're very concerned about noise, and that would apply to drones as well. Although, drones are definitely less noisy than jet aircraft, but still, they want you to be aware of that. So we have very complex chart supplement US entries. Then we have really simple ones like Green River. And they're quite proud of their airport, Green River Intergalactic Spaceport. It's just a simple airport. Airport remarks, unattended, so nobody's there. So no snow removal. Runway soft when wet, so it's not a paved runway. Cone markers. Okay, so it's very primitive airport. Latitude, longitude, time zone. There's a longitude, I'm sorry. And then we have CTAF is 122.9. Apparently they don't care how you enter the traffic pattern. Out there in Salt Lake City, near Salt Lake City. All right. South Bighorn, Colorado. Nothing really much to see here. A number of weather sources. We've got a frequency, a number. CTAF 22.9. That should remind you again that that is the multicom. There's delivery. Okay. All right, here's Napa Valley in California. We, again, latitude, longitude, information about the runway, runway lighting, right traffic, runway 1 right. Okay, 1 right. So we look for 1 right. Where's 1 right? It's way in there. Look at that. There's a little tiny runway right in here. Well, why would they want to make it right turns? Because they don't want to turn that way. They want to turn this way to stay away from the runway 1 left. So that traffic pattern is there, typically for a very smaller airplanes or fixed wing drones that do not have the vertical takeoff and landing ability. Weather sources, there's a number there. There's a ADIS. Okay, information about ADIS. Let me mention that as well. I sort of made a mark here. Okay, so what is ADIS? That would be a frequency 124.05. Okay, so when the control tower is operated, the control tower every hour or so will give a broadcast explaining or telling or advising pilots of the weather and also what's going on at the airport. Typically, what runway are they using and how far out do they want me to report other information about the airport, what's going on at the airport. So it's a source that we could listen to as well, but it's recorded to find out what the weather is and what runways they're using. Okay, the tower frequency is right there though, so 18.7. So we might, as we're just before launch, listen to the ATIS to find out what the weather was like and what runway they're using, and then tune into 18.7 and just listen to see what's going on with the traffic. So that's what ATIS is, and there'll be questions about ATIS. What's ATIS? Automatic Terminal Information System. All right. Okay, so I think that's it that I wanted to explain about Napa Valley. Yeah. All right, Needles, Arizona airspace. That's the odd thing about this, why I brought this up. It says here, Class E surface between 1600 and 000 Zulu. Other times, Class G. So Class E surface means that it's controlled airspace. We are not allowed to operate in that airspace without permission. Air traffic controller permission to operate in that area. But it's only during those hours. Other times it's Class G. Class G, I don't have the chart here, but if we were to look at it, we would see that it had that shaded magenta area, which would indicate 700 feet. Below 700 feet would be uncontrolled airspace in the vicinity of the airport. So it's part-time. That's an interesting note to make. Okay, and any other information? We just have the airport manager, weather, frequencies, and phone numbers. ASOS is the service that we have. I don't see left-hand, right-hand patterns. Looks like it's all going to be left-hand patterns. So that's good. Paxton Municipal Airport remarks, unattended, runway 1735, which is this runway here. Very rough, large animal holes throughout the runway, gravel road, parallels both runways. Not a very appealing description. Runway 8 has a 3-foot pole from the left edge, 500 from the runway end. There we have a multi-com frequency, 122.9. Just means that that's typically what manned aircraft talk to each other. It's just a general frequency for a number of different reasons or purposes. Right. Gunnison, Crested Butte, Denver area, right-hand traffic, runway 17. Airport remarks, airport conditions unmonitored at night. Okay, closed. Migratory bird activity, January through June. Weather services, Unicom 22.7, Class E airspace. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I think it's Wahahawa. But again, runway 24, right traffic. Why? because it looks like there's buildings over on this left-hand side. So if they were to make left-hand patterns on runway 24, well, they want you to make right-hand patterns. So it looks like, see all these little things here, maybe the military base. It's Wheeler Army Air Force base. Let's see, weather, ATIS, numbers and frequencies. It does have a tower frequency. Airspace Class D. Class D, Monday through Saturday from 1730 to 0900 Zulu, except holidays and weekends. All other times it's Class E. Again, we do need permission to operate in there, but it's not Class D. It reverts to Class E. Oh, this is in Hawaii. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so next episode, we want to talk about controlled airspace and chart reading again. So give this some thought. Think about Chart Supplement US. Of course, Chart Supplement US, you can get that online as well and search for different airports. But there are questions about Chart Supplement US and about airport operations in general. So again, read through those chapters that I mentioned at the beginning.